This year, like every year that will follow it from now on, is going to test the resilience of our national power grids and other systems like never before. You will, without a shadow of a doubt, experience some kind of extreme weather event. Flooding, hurricanes, heat waves, which will lead to power outages. To that end, today I'm taking a look at just one aspect of resilience and disaster preparedness with the Biolite BaseCharge Emergency Kit, which is a bundle of Biolite products designed to give you both light and power in an emergency situation. Now, before we start, Biolite is a company I've been keen to work with for a while now, as they have a genuine social enterprise aspect, with any product you buy from them going towards supporting that other aspect of the business. Their most famous patented technology is the camping stove, which captures some of the heat energy from the stove and turns it into electrical power. And as well as just being a more efficient stove, it means that you can charge your smart devices even when there's no light and no other obvious source of power. So that's a huge benefit in a grid down scenario. But that extends to their product offerings in developing markets, with stoves that use less fuel and are therefore cheaper to run, with less emissions and safer smokeless output. Now, I'll actually be reviewing the Biolite Camp Stove 2 Plus latest model in another video. Today we're going to focus on the emergency kit, but I did just want to mention that they appear to be making a real difference in the world. And you can read the full impact report on their website. So before I do a closer look at each of the individual parts of the kit, let's get a broad overview of what's in the emergency kit bundle. So first up is the star of the show, the BaseCharge 1500. And like most portable battery generators, it's named after the capacity, 1521 watt hours in this case. It's AC capable. This is the UK 220 volt model, but the US version is identical, just running with 110 volts with US sockets. Now, also in the bundle are 3 Alpenglow lanterns, and these are named after their lumens output. So you get 2 of the smaller 250 watt lumen models and 1 of the 500 lumen models. They are functionally identical, except that the 500 one is twice as bright as the others with twice as big a battery. Otherwise, the running time and features are exactly the same. Then for easier personal navigation, you'll find a headlamp headband light with a maximum 425 lumens, so more than enough for sort of directed work. However, I will just mention the model I received, and the one you can see here is the 325 headlamp, which is slightly different with no rear lamp, and that's just because the kit bundle wasn't available here in the UK at the time of recording. And then finally in the bundle you get a smaller portable battery, the Charge 80PD, which is a 20,000 milliamp, more common definition for USB-only batteries, but a more technically correct capacity would be 74 watt hours if you were comparing it to its big brother with 1500 watt hours. Of course, there is a cost benefit to buying in a bundle, and in this case it's to the tune of saving $210 over buying each component individually. The kit then costs $1,800 with free shipping, but the Alpenglow 500 and 250, those are $80 and $60 each. The Charge 80PD is $80, and the headlamp is $60 by itself. And the BaseCharge 1500 is normally $1,700 alone. So it's definitely worth it for $100 extra over the base price of the battery. If you were going to buy the BaseCharge plus one of the large Alpenglow lanterns or the portable charger anyway, then you're basically getting all the other bits thrown in for free. And if you weren't planning on buying any extras, but were just looking at the BaseCharge 1500, then I think paying $100 extra to get some fantastic emergency lighting and a smaller power bank, that's a bargain. It's definitely value packed. Okay, so let's take a closer look at each part of the kit and see how it performs. I'll start with the Alpenglow lamps because they're surprisingly useful, though it does take a little while to get used to the interface. Now, as I said, functionally the smaller 250 and 500 model are actually exactly the same, just one is a bit smaller than the other. Coming in at 2.6 inches diameter by 3.6 inches height, or 70 by 95 millimeters, while the larger one is 3.6 inches in diameter and 5.3 inches tall, or 95 by 135 millimeters. The lanterns charge over micro USB and can run for a maximum of 5 hours on a high setting or 200 hours on low. And that's the same for both models because the battery is proportionally the same for the light output on high or low setting for each. The lanterns can be either placed on a tabletop or hung via a sturdy metal clip hidden underneath the base. And as well as a micro USB charging port, they also feature a USB-A port, and that allows them to function as a charger for your other devices. And while this is feasible for the larger model, I think with a 6,400 milliamp hour battery inside of it, the 3,200 milliamp hour battery of the smaller model means you'd likely only get one and a half smartphone charges out of this. Now, as I said, controlling the lights takes a bit of getting used to because there's only one button and at least 8 different modes. So a single tap of the button takes you to the previous mode memory. Easy enough. If you press again within 2 seconds, you'll cycle through to the next mode. So from daylight, you get to warm light, then single color, then multicolor. And each of these modes has an alternative mode accessed via a motion sensor. So you shake it up and down to change those. Pure white can swap between full on or one side only, while warm white can change to a flickering candlelight. Can't really see it in the daytime now. Single color can change to color cycling, and multicolor can change to a sort of fireworks party mode, they call it. On top of that, most of the modes feature brightness settings. So you hold down the button to adjust the brightness and it'll flash 3 times when you're at the maximum or lowest brightness. In single color mode, however, this just adjusts the color instead. Let's leave this on warm white. So these are really handy to keep around and surprisingly bright. I don't think you'll actually need to use them on full brightness most of the time. The multicolor modes are a bit gimmicky. I don't know if I need to have an emergency light to have a party mode built in, but I don't suppose, again, it doesn't detract to have it. My one complaint about the lights would be that they use a micro USB cable to charge, which is pretty outdated at this point. I really would have liked to see USB-C charging on those. The Biolite headlamp is very comfortable and easy to fit, though the light bit feels a little bit plasticky to me. I guess to keep it lightweight, and of course, I can't judge the longevity of this strap, but it is comfortable at least and easy to adjust. The light portion can be angled quite far downwards, so useful when you're working on something in front of you and don't just want it straight forward. Functionally, the light portion offers basically everything you could want and uses the same sort of single button user interface as the Alpenglow lamps, with a single click to turn on or off, and then multiple clicks to change modes. So you have white, red, white strobe, and red strobe. In plain white or red mode, you can again hold down the button to adjust the brightness. The red isn't nearly as bright, but it's more than sufficient for use in complete darkness, and it's exactly what you would want. In fact, so as not to ruin your night vision. Again, though, the one you receive in the kit will be a little bit brighter than this. I think it's also a different design, so it's green color, and also has a red light on the rear for safely riding in the dark. Next up is the main star of the pack, which is the 1521 watt-hour battery capacity BaseCharge 1500. Features 2 easy carry handles on the side, and all the business parts of this unit are situated on the front. So here you'll find 3 standard AC ports, 2 USB-A, 2 USB-C. Those are all at a maximum 5 volts, 3 amps or 15 watts, as well as another USB-C PD port at 100 watt max, and some 12 volt DC output in the form of 2 standard 5.5mm DC sockets, as well as 1 car socket for your portable refrigerator RV type appliances. Each of those groups has its own control button, and also for output there's a 10 watt wireless charger on the top, which is handy. And in terms of input, you have a high power port or HPP, which is the same as Goal Zero, and unfortunately not that common, so I don't have a solar charger cable that will fit this, and there isn't one included in the set. In terms of portability, at 28.5 pounds or 12.9 kilograms, it's easy enough for one person to carry, even with just one of the side handles. And the overall footprint is 14.4 by 12.2 inches on the base, and a mere 8.2 inches high, or 37 by 31 by 21 centimeters. So it's pretty compact and convenient. The size and fact that everything is situated on the front is perhaps one of its most unique properties. Unlike most portable batteries, which end up being more like a suitcase and stand upright, with ports all over the place on the sides and around the back, This flatter design means that you can slide it into a shelving unit in your pantry or emergency cupboard easily and still be able to access all of these ports. Of course, there's an AC charger included, but it's limited to around 120 watts, so it'll take maybe 13.5 hours for a full charge. Interestingly, you can also use the USB-C PD port to increase the charge rate. That can become an input port if you have, say, a PD charger on hand, like from a laptop, and that'll cut the total charge time down to 8 hours. If you do happen to get some solar panels, then under peak input 400 watt optimal conditions, it would take 4 hours to fully charge. But in my experience, peak input is rare, to say the least, at least where I am in the UK, so more likely it would take a whole day of good sun. As for output, the BaseCharge 1500 is rated for 1200 watts continuous with 2400 watt surge. And that's a little underrated compared to what I'd normally expect. Generally speaking, most portable batteries can do a continuous output the same as their watt-hour capacity. To be honest, it's not a huge deal because once you get over sort of 1000 watts, you're generally going to find appliances that start to draw more, sort of 2,000 to 3,000 watts. So the 1200 watt output on this would not be sufficient to run a full-size kettle or even the highest level of this induction hot plate, although it can handle the lower levels fine, and I was able to cook a tasty bacon and eggs sandwich. It can run anything designed to be portable like a travel kettle. It's just not going to handle those sort of huge appliances with some sort of heating element or large motor. What it will easily handle is a laptop, 4 smartphones. You can max out all the USB ports and be nowhere near that 1200 watt capacity. It's only once you start using higher powered AC devices that you'll hit that limit. So to figure out roughly how long the emergency battery will last you, as always, divide the total capacity when full, which is just over 1500 watt hours, by the power you want to draw and pull from it. So a 100 watt device will last roughly 1500 divided by 100, or 15 hours. In more practical terms, it would recharge a typical smartphone over 100 times, or around 20 times for a laptop, or you could run your super high powered 1200 watt microwave continuously for just over an hour. So there's a lot you can do with 1500 watt hours or 1.5 kilowatt hours, but it's also worth bearing in mind that the average American household uses that much power in just over an hour. Of course, this isn't designed to run your entire house, and I'll note that the front panel has a super useful indicator that will estimate how long you have left. And you can even see a running total of how many watt hours have been used, which is a resettable counter. So, lastly in this emergency pack is a fairly generic looking 20,000 milliamp hour USB backup battery called the Charge 80 PD. And that features 2 15 watt USB-A and 1 18 watt USB-C PD port. And this is safe to take on planes. I'll add it's FAA carry-on compliant. But the 18 watt limit on the USB-C PD port seems a little bit disappointing. You couldn't say run a laptop off this. It would trickle charge the battery while you used it, but the power consumption would be more like 30 to 35 watts. So this wouldn't run it completely, which is normally what you'd expect from a PD port. In fact, the PD port on the battery itself will go to 100 watts. So what don't I like about this emergency kit first? The discrepancy with the cabling is a little bit weird. The PD charger uses USB-C cable to refill. All the cables are provided, of course, but the lighting bits use micro USB. I think having a unified cabling system would have been much better for usability. You don't really want to be scrabbling around for different kinds of cables in the dark or when you're panicking. Probably my single biggest complaint is that for a home emergency kit, there's no solar panel included, nor is there even a solar cable for connecting a solar panel. You would need to buy both separately, and in a grid down scenario, it is really important to have some way to replenish the battery. 1500 watt hours sounds like a lot, but if you have even a low power continuous draw medical device like a small oxygen machine or a CPAP, it will deplete a lot faster than you actually think. In a real emergency scenario, I would say 1500 watt hours is probably going to last you a day of emergency power for most people. Of course, you're going to get a lot longer if you're only charging your smartphone and laptop, but you're probably buying an AC capable battery because you want to power something like, say, a CPAP machine or an oxygen concentrator or a small fridge. Obviously, something AC powered, otherwise it's not worth getting a bigger unit like this. So at the very least, I would factor in the cost of a couple of 100 watt panels to go with this. And then if you do get solar for it, you're limited to 400 watt charge rate at a very low voltage. Most large battery packs I've reviewed will work up to 48 volts for input, maybe even 120, while this is limited to 30 volts. So it's really only suitable for charging from smaller portable panels rather than, say, one of these larger static panels. Even just one of those is going to be too much for this because it outputs at a much higher voltage. I also kind of wish the BaseCharge battery had a light system built into it. In an emergency, this becomes the central hub to family life. Being able to recharge your phone and your laptop, that's great. And while the kit does come with its own individual lighting components, having one built into the battery itself to provide a little ambient light while you're right here next to the BaseCharge itself would have been quite useful. I think they could have easily integrated something, a flexible LED strip inside a part of the case around the edge. Not too bright, but just some light. Lastly, while these lamps are certainly something I would consider buying outside of a bundled kit, they really are quite neat. The smaller Charge PD is a little bit disappointing, and if I was looking for a 20,000 mAh smartphone backup battery, I probably wouldn't recommend this. It's very much a basic device, functional, I guess fine for emergencies, but for the price, I think you could do better. So, overall then, should you buy the Biolite Emergency Kit? As an overall package, I think the value you get from the kit is remarkable, and I talked a little bit about that earlier. Individually, there's nothing technologically groundbreaking about any of the component parts. It's a standard battery pack, a standard portable battery for USB, some pretty standard lights, although they do have a lot of different modes. But they all do exactly what they're designed to with minimum of fuss, and that's really what you want from something designed for emergencies. You don't want to mess around with an app, you just want something good value to put on the shelf, keep charged, and be somewhat prepared for the next emergency. Though, of course, power is just one tiny aspect of emergency preparedness. Don't forget about the rest of it. I think my favourite part of the package is actually the lanterns. Despite the oddly complex single-button user interface, they get remarkably bright, and the little hangers on the base are really handy, as well as the RGB and flickering candlelight, meaning you can have a slightly nicer ambience while the world around you collapses. The biggest expense of the package, the BaseCharge 1500, is, however, strictly for emergency use, I'd say. Keep it charged, top it up every 6 months, keep it on the shelf until needed. It's not something you should go off-grid daily living with. Even for low power uses, I wouldn't recommend kitting out your camper van with this or your log cabin, unless it was strictly for occasional vacation use. And that's because although it can handle a fairly big amount of AC power at 1.2 kilowatts continuous, the limited 400 watt solar charge would make it tricky to fully charge back up again on cloudy days. And the 1,000 cycle rated lithium ion cells for the battery inside here means it would degrade after only a few years of daily discharges. Most batteries nowadays use LFP or lithium ion phosphor cells, which are rated to 3,500 cycles, and they'll last a lot longer in daily use before the capacity is down to 80%, unlike the lithium ion cells in here. But as I said, overall brilliant value if you were to consider the battery and a light or two anyway. And Biolite is an American company with a strong ethical mission behind it, which is always a good reason to choose one brand over another. Thank you to Biolite for shooting this over for review, and to you for watching. If you have any questions, hit me up in the comments and I'll try my best to answer. Otherwise, hit like, consider subscribing, and I'll see you in the next one, where I'll be taking a look at the Biolite Camp Stove 2 Plus. Stay safe.